Okay, guys, today I'm going to be talking about the influences the world has on us versus the influence that we let the Lord have on us. We're just really going to hop right in. The first verse is going to be Philippians 4:8. It says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." So we all know that what we put in our mind, what we let influence us, is who we are going to be. So the people that we hang out with, the things we watch, listen to, see, that's what's going to become who we are. If we are around it long enough, that's what it's going to be, because that's what you're feeding your brain. So that's going to determine your words, your actions, and ultimately the output and the person that you look like towards others. So if that is something negative, something unadmirable or honorable to the Lord, is that what you want? Do you want to be somebody who people look at and say, "Oh, that's a Christian girl or boy," or "Oh, they're loving, they're kind"? Or do you want to say, "Oh, they're always swearing or doing this or putting people down"? That's when you have to ask the question, who do you want people to see you as, and who do you want to ultimately, like, who do you want to be? And as simple as that sounds, who do you want to be is something that we should always ask ourselves, because every action we take is determining our next step and where we're going to go in life. So if you have a goal to become a professional gymnast, for an example, and you're not doing gymnastics, then are you going to be a professional gymnast? No. That's a large, simple example, but if you want to be somebody who is, I'll just use this example again, loving, and you're hanging out around people who are gossiping or putting others down or always judging, are you going to be able to be that loving person when you're constantly being influenced by these people who are not very loving people, or at least that's not what they're putting out of? So who do you want to be is a question that you should always ask yourself. And we should just allow that to resonate with us so that we know we're taking the right steps for our future goals. So in Philippians 4:8, Paul is telling us to program our minds with thoughts that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, praiseworthy. And we can find those things in people, shows, music, just like we can find negative things in those same sources. It's what sources are you using? What are you watching? And if you examine your life and your actions and what you're letting influence you, and you look at it and you say, I'm watching these kind of movies, I'm listening to this kind of music, hanging around these kind of people, and trying to be this kind of person, and that's not noble, admirable, loving, which are what Paul says we should be, then those are some things that we might want to weed out and get rid of, because we're never going to be fulfilled or satisfied if we're always bogged down in those things. So I guess there we could ask God to help us focus on what is good and what is pure, and let that kind of be our prayer. If you're struggling with anything that is not of the Lord and not admirable or honorable towards Him, then ask it's not always easy just to let go of something that's such a big part of your life, but in prayer, God will ease that and make that possible for you. So ask God to help you focus on what is good and pure. And we're not perfect. So, like I said, with prayer, God can help us, but we're never going to be perfect. We're always going to be tempted by this because that is what the world puts on us. The world feeds and is fueled off of drama, different situations, arguments. Like, the world thrives off of that, and that's so sad, but it's always the next thing. It's always the next case that everybody wants to examine and be interested in, or the next trend. It's always changing because none of it's fulfilling. You always have to have something new. The only thing that ever will be truly fulfilling is the Lord, and the whole world is not Christians, and they try to find their joy in other things. So we need to discipline ourselves and to try to be that better person. The Lord calls us to be hearers and doers of the word, and not a stone wall, not trying to change. So if we are being hearers, we hear the word, we hear that Paul is telling us to feed our brains with things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, praiseworthy, then that's what we should try to be doers of. We heard that. We know that this is true. The word is true. This is true. This is truth. So we should try to do it and not just read it. What good does the Bible do for us if we read it and don't change anything about it? So for a minute, let's dial in on one of the most prevalent parts of I would say most of our lives is social media. I mean, if you're watching this video, you're on it right now. Social media has such an impact on every single person, whether you have it or not. It is what the world uses to function. And you're going to be influenced by it one way or the other. So let's look at James 1:27, and it says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." I'll read that again. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless. What I'm about to say is the religion that the Lord sees pure and faultless. This is what God wants our religion to look like. He wants us to look after orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Okay? This Bible was written thousands and thousands of years ago. And the Lord still desired for us to not be polluted by the world. Okay? He knew that we were going to have influences from all sorts of things that try to distract us and pull him away from us. And that is why it is so important that we stay in the word, and so that we can defend our faith in the midst of all the distractions and the influences of the world. But the Lord calls us to present ourselves as a sacrifice. He wants us to serve others. The Lord Jesus, he was a servant. He served others, and that's what God calls us to do. He calls us to be a light of him by serving others. And so to prevent ourselves from being polluted by the world, we need to commit ourselves to Christ, and not the world. We need to commit ourselves to wanting to serve others, to loving others, and to in the midst of all the blurriness and all the confusion that the world puts on us, to be a light for him. And we are not to adapt to the world's systems and to the values the world holds, such as money, fame, pleasures, power. Like, you're never going to be satisfied in that. No amount of money, no amount of fame, no amount of Instagram followers, Snapchat story viewers, power, pleasure, no position that you can ever hold is going to satisfy you. It may fulfill you for that minute or that period in time, but nothing is going to be a lasting satisfaction besides the Lord. And so true faith, if we are believers of this word, means nothing if we let those things consume us. If we let money or, a position or items or followers consume us, then what does our faith mean? Because that's not of the Lord. Then, we can be Christians all we want, but if we're not desiring what the Lord wants for us, then how are we even living out a Christian life? James 4:4 says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world is hatred toward God? Anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Okay, so that's saying that if we let our joy come from the world, if that's where we try to find our joy, our pleasure, our satisfaction, our value, our purpose, then that's showing hatred towards God. Because if 1 second we're saying this is the truth, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, God saved me, I'm going to heaven, but then we're not satisfied in this, and we're not fueling our brain with this and getting our thoughts and our motivations and our power and our purpose in His word, then that's showing hatred to the Lord, because that's essentially saying, God, what you have is not enough for me. But really, all God has is all we need. But it's important that we stay strong in our faith so that we're able to be able to tell the difference between what is right and what is wrong. And the word of God will convict us of those things. And if you stay in prayer for Him to remove those negative influences from your life, then God will. God desires for you to have a life with Him. Now, not all social media is bad and influencers are bad. I mean, plenty of it is good and positive, God-honoring content that influences us, but then plenty of it is also not. And a lot of us spend hours and hours a day on social media, and like up to 8 and 11 hours. That's crazy. But if all of that is not God honoring, then you're just filling your brain with useless content, and it's going to shape who you are and is that who you want to be? So a good start to taking control of our influences and really taking control of our life and making an effort to become who we want to be is to take some of that time. If you're spending 8 hours on your phone or any amount of time that you're spending being influenced by something not of the Lord, then use that time, weed that time out of your life. Find where that is. If you're having thoughts of hatred, of thoughts of judging or wanting to gossip, find where that influence is coming from, and weed that out of your life, and take that time, take that extra time that you found, and spend it in the Word and growing closer to the Lord, and just asking Him to remove those influences. Then we will be influenced by love, service, sacrifice, compassion, and ultimately letting that overcome us and become who we are. And nobody desires to be a hated person, somebody who's known for talking down on others. Nobody desires that. So let traits of the Lord become who you are. Colossians 3:2 tells us to set all our mind on things above and not of this earth. We will never truly be satisfied in success, in money, friends, but any other worldly desires, none of that will ever satisfy us but the Lord. If we are in the Lord, then we will find lasting satisfaction. So think about what is distracting you from the Lord, and what influences in your life are just taking you away from the Lord and not allowing you to be who the Lord has made you and called you to be and live out your full purpose, and what influences you need to weed out of your life to help you become who you want to be.